I grew up watching Star Wars. You should not be surprised when the first big project I wanted to make when I got my hands on a 3D printer was some Star Wars armor. Welcome back to the channel, my name's Tasha, and this is the What I've Learned series. Three weeks ago, I started this project, technically 4, but for the first week I was sick, and I decided that during that time I would at least be printing parts, but I essentially had 3 weeks that I wanted to try to get as much of this project done as possible. So bits did get rushed. It definitely wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but that's because on April 13th, I went to my second ever convention. All of the plastic you see here is printed at a PLA, and it was done on the Ender 3 Pro. This printer was generously lent to me and then given to me by a great friend of mine. I know you're watching this, just know that I still have no idea how to say thank you. I've learned a massive amount about this 3D printer and the way that printing works through this process, and honestly, I don't think I would have learned nearly as much within that time frame printing regular things, as most of it probably would have been household items. Hopping straight into the process, we're gonna start with the first 4 pieces. A good chunk of these pieces I sliced myself, as some of the ones that I was using before from this article I found were kind of off somehow, even though they were all supposedly taken from a solid STL file. Some of them just came out a little bigger than they were supposed to, and you will definitely notice this later on. Most of the beginning process was pretty much just sanding. I used 150 grit sandpaper because that was the highest I had. I thought I was doing something at first with the 50 and then working my way up, but it turns out that it just absolutely shreds it, and the PLA sands the sandpaper. So ideally I would have had 400 up to 700 grit, but I didn't have the money at the start, and then when I did, I bought other things. So, yeah, that's how I spent most of my time. I didn't have a palm sander at this point, and I still don't, but I'd like to get one before I start my next project, and yeah, most of it was just lots and lots of sanding. Aside from the odd little bumps, the top 4 pieces actually came together pretty nicely, especially once you sand down any rough bits, any wobble, whatever. It was pretty flush with itself, so you can see here that it's, aside from the ends, it's pretty good. So the only issues I had on a couple pieces, which turned out way worse later on, was lifting from the bed during prints, so then you end up with warping along the edges, and that is a much bigger problem because it's a bigger hole to fill, and you have to find a product that works for that will last. To get them to stay together, I just used Gorilla Super Glue and went around the inside seams after 2 just to give it a stronger bond, and it seemed to work great until I dropped it the other day. But we're not going to talk about that. It withstands, it feels super thick and durable, like it was really impressive. I've never had a better experience with gluing things before. This is the super glue here I used. I wish I got the big tub because it turned out I could have used a lot more than I actually had, but on the right here is the Bondo I use, which you'll see later on, which is great for cracks and lit print lines. When I mentioned my issues with warping and having big gaps that were difficult to seal, this was one of the worst, especially as it was on the front and everything ended up uneven. It really caused a lot of problems for me. It did come out a little rough in the end, but I kind of worked it into the look of the helmet. While all the super glue dried together, I used blue masking tape to hold it. I'm honestly not 100% sure why most people recommend blue masking tape. I feel like maybe it sticks better, but it's just the thickest roll I could find, and it seemed the most convenient. I was now on to printing the faceplates, so you can see here that it was continuing in white, but it was actually about to run out, so I was constantly up and down the stairs trying to catch it for when I need to replace it with the blue. The thing is, I thought I missed it, but I was exactly on time. The only thing is, when I paused the printer, it decided to continue printing it offset. The reason I took this piece off the printer wasn't actually anything to do with that, though. At about 2 AM, when I went to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, I found that it was a huge pile of spaghetti, so I had to slice out the sections that were now missing and print those separately. I was a little worried about the durability in the long run, but it actually turned out pretty okay. Even though the prints I'd made now were slightly on the longer side, everything went together relatively well. The only thing I'd recommend from most of this is to print one thing at a time. If you stack several prints of a build plate, it may seem really convenient because you throw it on, you're pretty much good until it's done. But if one piece fails, the whole thing fails. So you're either left with two things. You can stop the print and try to figure out how to print the rest of it, like I did here, or you can watch it while it wastes one half of the print and the other can finish up. Really not worth doing, as you waste a lot of filament that way, so that's why I ended up coming to this conclusion. So, when I next make another piece of armor, I'm gonna do it piece at a time. I don't care if I have to stop and restart the printer every 6 hours. It doesn't take that long to do, just a couple minutes. Make sure it's all level in between prints too. You're gonna end up with cleaner prints as well, like, even without fails, because you're adjusting it between everyone. So, that's kind of my 2 cents there. The other thing with these slices of the helmet are that some of them weren't mine. So, as they already came with all the details and the small bits of the helmet attached, I just started printing it that way and left it as is. I would personally cut all those bits out and glue them on after, especially if you have seams in that section. It really helps to hide it, and it will bring everything together a little easier for you. You also don't really have to worry about as much going wrong, because then you can print those details flat, whereas most of these helmet pieces aren't flat, so you have to print them standing up with supports. So you can see here, once I cleaned off any of the debris from the printer, that it's got some rough bits. Ignore the print lines for now, that's something else I'll touch on in a minute. But there's these little bumps, little drips, little blobs. You really don't have to deal with any of that, so if I'd taken those side pieces off, I probably would have avoided that issue. Back to the print lines, you can see here that they're not great. Some of them are pretty big, like on the top piece here. On the face plates, they were really wobbly. I actually had a lot of issues with Z-wobble recently, and I've only just fixed it. The reason I appreciate the mess of this helmet is actually, it's helped me learn the ways around the printer. So my next piece won't turn out like this. It will be cleaner, ideally, and I will have less work to do. Thanks to that. After gluing everything together, I really had nothing to do because I was waiting for some good weather so I could go outside and start bondoing. I don't have a garage and it is snowing here. On Easter. I'm gonna hope this doesn't look bad. Doing this again. Just filmed this in portrait mode by accident, so now I gotta do it again. I have the first few pieces of Bondo outside. So we have 2 layer. You can see it's been the first layer I have started sanding. It's fucking cold outside, so I've been doing this in like segments. That's why these are obviously not finished. Like there's a lot of lines that need to be covered up, even down here, like especially all in here is gonna be a real pain. But this is kind of like a first layer partially done. This is a little more done. And then this I've started sanding. It's still got a lot that still needs to be done on it. So you can, anywhere that's white, I basically want to cover. Like we've still got this gap to fight with. Like it's got a lot of rough patches, but kind of leaving it to dry, see what happens, see how it goes. And figure it out from there. It was heavily recommended to do the Bondo in thin layers, so that's also kind of why I did little bits at a time. Having low grit sandpaper also made this process a lot more difficult. As you can see, we went from having print lines to little bumps and sections that were uneven. Part of that was also probably because I was applying Bondo with a piece of cardboard. It was really starting to come together pretty fast though. I finally had everything basically printed and bondoed, and because I was running out of time, I just went with it. We were gonna see how it goes, but to finish sealing all the cracks and stuff, I had to make sure I had everything glued together. So here you can see Chloe wearing this beautiful masterpiece. While reading along the guidelines for the Mandalorian Mercs custom costumes regulations, I realized that you can use Nerf guns. I didn't go super into big details on how specific the gun had to be, or if it had to be certain style, shape, whatever. I just took the only one I had, scraped all the titles off, and kind of went for it. You see here, I'm doing all the details in an acrylic paint. I've done that on top of a clear matte primer. The thing is, some of it still peeled anyways because it's dollar store acrylic, so I would just recommend getting red spray paint, which I did end up doing in the end. So, I also recommend taking lots of pictures of how your gun was disassembled, because I really fought to put this thing back together. Another term I learned while scouring this website was the word greebles, and it basically is a term coined by the 501st, used to talk about tiny pieces that when put on a bigger piece make it look more complex. So here I found loads of free little ones on Thingiverse, specifically for Star Wars stuff, and I was gonna slap a couple on the gun afterwards. So I actually don't have any footage of spray painting, just because the gaps in the weather were so rare that I basically grabbed everything and went straight outside and got straight to it. So here's kind of the first lot of color. I did want to go with a black and gold theme, and then I leaned into the TK pilot look almost, with the, like, as a galactic Sith Empire Mandalorian type of thing. I'm not sure, and it's my first one, so it didn't really matter. Plus, I had these leftover little bits from a Stormtrooper I started printing and then didn't continue, so I put those on there too. So yeah, we went with the black and red color palette, and I very carefully stenciled out these spots for the Empire logo. Unfortunately, the one on the back turned out pretty rough. The one on the front came out pretty good, but this one was kind of messy, so we had to go in and touch up all the rough bits.
I just realized looking at this, I've missed some spots on the underside of here. But that's okay, because all the weird blotchy bits that you saw right the way around this, especially back here, which was super disappointing. I'm gonna try and take the spray paint we used and fix it.
To blend in the fact that it had so many very noticeable print lines and seams and bumps from the Bondo, I really leaned into the rough, worn look. I know some people said it kind of worked out pretty good. We're not going to look at the back pieces because they didn't all fit together right to keep the top on. But all in all, I was pretty happy with it. For our first ever proper build, this turned out pretty much as I expected it to, which I was super, super happy about. I think the words I used exactly when talking to Chloe were that I was chuffed to bits.
So, the insides of this helmet, there are these bits of padding on the front, and there was one on the back. But the thing is, the shape of the padding itself was pulling the sticky bits off, so I've had it sat overnight with elastic band. Hopefully it'll kind of fix the shape, and if not, I'm gonna try to super glue the sticky pads right on the back, just so we have a tighter fit on the helmet, because it does wobble a lot.
I was given a clear visor and tint, so I didn't have to worry about that, which was nice, and while thrifting, I saw some of these cool things, so the temptation to grab the Genesis and the Minecraft fabric was a little too high, but we settled on this nice red, and this kinda meshy, cloak-like black fabric. I really don't know how to explain it, but it looked and felt perfect. I ended up not using the red in the end, just because I didn't have time to get everything together. The last bit I wanted to add was this lightsaber handle from this plastic pieced together bit from Disney from when I was a child. So I attached a hook, but ended up going away from that and using this, like, belt strap. So, dude, I put the helmet on for 5 seconds, and it already leaves that side of my face red.
Probably just like the paint.
Anyways, we have relatively done helmet, which is pretty cool. Obviously, still not the best, but we made it work. And we have the inside, so there's some padding bits, and then I've just made these, the 2 back corner ones out of scrap fabric from the cloak, because I didn't have enough padding. And I don't have anything on the top, because I actually sit pretty well at the top of the helmet. I just might put something softer in there in the future, but again, this is pretty much just trying to cram everything in for the con, which is in like 3 hours, and I will see you when we're getting ready to go. I've also got to test this janky little mic I bought off of AliExpress like months ago, so we should do that. Everything I wore under the armor was thrifted except for the belt and the socks, and the undershirt. So, well, actually the undershirt I did end up thrifting a long time ago, but not intentionally for this. So, it's just a black athletic wear shirt. The gray is kind of like this weird stretchy jacket I found, and then the pants are basically pocketless cargo pants except for on the back, which was kind of useful because I needed my phone. The cloak I entirely made from that fabric you saw earlier. I was really happy that I knew how to use a sewing machine. Just needed a refresher, but it was finally pretty complete. The helmet looks absolutely huge in comparison to the rest of me, and I think if I'd have done a full set of armor, it would have evened it out, but I was still happy with the results. All we had to do now was to wait for everyone else to get ready, and we were set to go. I finished my salad, and the cats were social, and here's Chloe as Jessica Jones. I'm embarrassed that I don't know who that is. We also have Neriel Sudica as Gladriel, and my mom as Mary Poppins. This is Jessica Jones. I'm testing the tiny mic. I can't guarantee that it will work well, but we are walking in now. I don't know if this mic is working. It's gonna have so much echo. I just asked Chloe how you get a stroller up an escalator, but she can't hear me.
Oh yeah, I can't hear him.
Chloe's deaf.
Yeah, just a little.
Just a wee bit. Got the goods. Got the goods.
Got the goods.
For those of you who've been in my Discord server, you would know that I was interested in making a video about the retro arcade that they were going to have at this con. It wasn't retro. There was like 8 Nintendo Switches, some off-brand handheld Game Boy looking things, and 1 Series X. And the whole place was obviously full of children, so we did not stay. All in all, it was a pretty cool experience, and it's nice to get out. A lot of the crowd there was still anime fans, as our town is pretty huge for just that. For the price, it was a little steep, but it was the first time they'd ever been there, so we're excited to see what it's like next year. I hope you all enjoyed this video. This was an incredibly cool project for me, and I've already set my sights on my next one. Hopefully this next one will actually be a full suit of armor that will be submitted to either the 501st or the Mando Mercs. Not sure which I will start with first, but our next con that we're looking at is in August, so that gives me 4 months, which could be realistic depending on how I manage things, which we all know I'm not always great at. So I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and I will see you guys next time. See ya!